All right, hi everyone. I am back. It is Back to Basics lesson number 3. I hope that between lesson number 2 and lesson number 3 that you practiced your basic CPT shapes. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you've landed on lesson number 3 out of order, basic CPT shapes is what we did on lesson number 2, and I encourage you to go back wherever and find lesson number 2 first. Otherwise, continue on with me on lesson number 3. I am at the website pattern-collections.com. Now, if you don't put the dash, very important to have that dash, pattern-collections.com. If you don't have the dash, you go to the wrong website. Apparently you go to a website that has to do with quilting, which is a lovely thing, but not the patterns that we're looking for. Now that you have your shapes and you're working on your arm movements, your hand movements, your pressure of your pen, the type of pen. Maybe you have decided what kind of pen of the pens that you own. Perhaps by now, after practicing, you have decided which pens you like and you want to work with. That would be good. Maybe you've decided what kind of paper you like and you want to work with. That would be good too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to learn, for those who are just like completely 100% starting out, that have no clue. This is what I'm doing this lesson for. If you don't need this, skip on by, won't hurt my feelings. But we're going to learn about how to read a pattern. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to the menu, and I'm actually going to pick by skill level. And then I'm going to pick a stage 1 pattern so that you can learn how to read a pattern. And let's just start with the first one. Now, the first one's not probably the best one to start with. Let's start with this one called aim. The way the patterns are, you'll notice that they're numbered 1, 2, 3 or whatever, and they have red and then they have black, and sometimes they'll have green, and I'll go to a green one in a second. But the first step will always be the red. The red is what you need to draw now in step 1. Then in step 2, what you already drew in step 1 will change to black. And then the red will be what you need to draw next in step 2. And then if it shows a step 3, it will do again. It will change the last step finished will go to black. So this one doesn't have very many steps, so it's it doesn't really show that well. Let's go to another one that has a few more steps to it. Okay, this one has quite a few more steps. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on step number 1, and it's showing us that in step number 1, we're going to draw these circles or these round shapes. You notice they're not exactly circles. Okay, and then in step number 2, see how it changes? Step number 1 was like that. Step number 2 shows this now is in black. That's already drawn. And the next thing we do is the part that's in red. Okay, and then step number 3, again, now the stuff we just drew has turned to black, and the stuff we need to do is now in red. And then again, step number 4, That has all turned to black, what we just finished drawing. And now what we need to do next is in red. And that continues until you have gotten, now the last one usually shows the whole pattern all in black, means you're done. You don't need to add anything else. Now it will show variations on how you can do things differently. But the main, and it will always show you a main artwork. This is how Ina has set up her website. Always it shows you the pattern-collections.com. That's all it is. HTTP pattern-collections.com. Okay, it is the home of pattern tangling. This is where I get all of my stuff, and the reason I get it from here is because Ina gave me permission to show her website pages on YouTube. That is the reason I do it from here. There are other pattern websites out there, but I don't have permission to show the pages from those websites. So these are all of the beginner patterns, the ones that are the easiest to draw, the easiest to figure out. Okay, like this one shows some green. Let me show you that. This one shows that in green, you draw a base like a grid. Okay, and then using that pencil grid, the green is pencil. So using the green pencil grid, you will then draw in pen this shape. And then once you have that, it'll still show, sometimes it'll show the green will disappear. That means that you can go ahead and erase. But here is where they've done those outlines in pen. And now the next step is to do these radiating lines in the pen. And then step 3 shows the shading. And then you can erase your grid and you end up with that, which is really fun. I haven't done this one in a really long time, but that's a fun pattern. I think I need more. Usually the green pencil lines are usually in grid patterns, because most of the patterns start with you drawing the grid in pencil. That way you can choose to either ink over those grid lines and keep them as part of your design, or you can do your design around the grid lines and using that as a guide and then erase the grid lines. This one is different, where it shows that we're going to do some of these rice-like shapes. Remember from lesson number 2, the rice-like shapes that are in the C-shape section. We're going to do the rice-like shapes, some of them in pencil and some of them in pen, in step number 1. Then in step number 2, looks like, and they didn't do this step 100% like I would have done to show this as a beginner pattern. They actually filled in these shapes with the pen. See, right there. But looks like what we're going to do next on this one is we're going to make a wiggly squiggly line horizontally across the page, going around these shapes and around these shapes, the pencil lines as well, so that when we erase the pencil, you have some black and white of that same shape, like a shadow image, which is really cool. And then in the sample, it shows that the shapes don't have to be that rice shape. They can be anything. I've never done this one before. Interesting. But these are all, there's a lot of patterns in here to get you started to practice the easier shapes and the easier steps. Okay, this is where I want you to start if you want to start drawing patterns. I'm going to draw one real quick that is easy to, that would be good to show with shading. Which one do you think would be a good one to show shading? I'm going to do this one. So I'm going to draw this one real quick. First thing we're going to do is, they already have it shown here, is to draw some parallel lines with a big gap in between and some more parallel lines. And then inside there we're going to draw either a curve or a straight like that, and then the next step curve going this way, and then the next step curves going this way. Or if you do them straights, then you do a zigzag, and then you do straights going one way and then straights going the other way. Either one works. I'm just going to draw this up real quick and then show you some shading, because I also want to talk about shading and shading a pattern. Especially when you start getting into the more intricate patterns. Let's see some of the artwork that shows a really intricate shading. Do I have any? Not in the beginner patterns. Let's see. Let's go by skill level and let's find some expert ones, because those should really show us some interesting shading on the completed patterns. Let me go down here. Come on. Some of them are colored. A lot of them are colored. Okay, that's not where I want to go. Let's try stage 3. I don't know. I'm just looking for different kinds of patterns that might have some interesting shading. Okay, this one. This is a good one. The completed pattern, the completed one, has some shading. Not only does it have shading, see, this is where it's left completely white. It's got a little bit of shading here to make it stand out from here, but these also are shaded here and around here to make all of it slightly roundy, and then these are shaded darker around the edge here to show that they're on top of these ones here. So it's got like 3 different kinds of shading on this one. So I want to kind of talk about shading a little bit, because those are the 2 things you really kind of need. Once you've started doing base patterns, you need to shade them. So I'm going to turn on my light because I like to have some good light and get rid of shadows. I'm going to grab my pen. What did I do with my pen? I had it right there. There it is. Let's do a little shatuk, which was that pattern I showed you before with the parallel lines. We're not making it into a particular artwork. I'm just going to do them really quick. I like this pattern. But I'm going to do it fast. So it may not be very good. Like I said on lesson number 2, best if you can slow down and draw your pattern in a nice, calm way. I am not doing that right now, so it may be a bit sloppy. I know that my spacing isn't exactly right here, but you'll get the idea. Mostly I want to just talk about how to shade and what to do. I should have, if I had thought about it ahead of time, had some already drawn up and ready to go. But no, was I prepared for this? No, I was not. And let's do, shall we do this one again here? Or shall I do the zigzag one? Let's do the zigzag one. We'll do both kinds. Straight lines and curvy lines. Okay, we'll do this real quick. And this real quick. This one's really bad as to artwork quality. Really bad. But I just want to give you the idea. And this would be coming up this way. Okay, that gives you the idea of how this would work. Okay, straight or curved. And then what you'll do is put a little graphite where it looks like they're on top of each other. So like this one looks like it's on top of that one. This one looks like it's on top of that one. And so forth. So I want to put a little bit of pencil right along these lines. And the softer your pencil, the easier it is to blend. This particular one is a 2B. B's are softer than H's. H's are hard. So I always go with at least just a regular B, but 2B or 4B are my go-to types. I prefer those. I'm going to use a blending stump because I like that better. And I'm going to just drag that graphite outward with the darkest near this edge and just let it kind of feather out. And that creates the layers. And you can see how that now looks more dimensional than this. Even though they kind of looked the same before, now they look different. Once again, I can do that same thing for this one, and it will create that dimension. So, but this one's a little bit different. So I think I'm going to go this way on that one. So these will all go this way. But I think I also am going to go this way. And they will look slightly different than this because of the zigzaggy nature. And you'll note I'm kind of being sloppy here because the point is to show you how the shading can make things look completely different. And the nice thing about shading is that if you don't really like what you did, while you're practicing and you don't like it, you said, you know, I don't like this. I don't want this on this side. I don't like it like that. You can come back in and you can erase your shading, and that's okay. Or you can decide, I don't like any of what I did. Just erase the whole thing. That's all right too. And decide maybe I want to put shading here. like this. So now instead of looking like these are overlapping each other, it looks like that's just a pattern, but this now is on top and that's behind, or this is sort of curved. If I had shaded it slightly differently, it would look curved. So let me talk about shading in general. Just in art in general. Let me zoom out just a smidge. Most of the time in most artworks, you need a light source. So if you have a shape, let's do a round shape. If your light is coming from here, because like my light right now is right there. So my light is coming this way across my page. If my light is coming across my page this way, it's going to come and hit this. If this object, let's do 2. Okay. If this one is a solid object, I need to be a little closer. You guys need to be closer. If this is a solid object, like a ball, then this side of it will be darker because the light is coming from here. This part right here will be the lightest. It might have a little bit around the edge here, but it will be darkest down here. Okay? And if it's sitting on something, it will cast a shadow this direction. Okay? Like that. So now when you smudge your pencil and you make it slightly darker there and lighter at the top, and you smudge your shadow, you have a ball, a 3-dimensional, it looks like a ball in space. If I think I've got that too dark, I can take my eraser and lighten that up a little bit. Okay, now I like it better. Okay, but what if you've drawn a hole? The light is coming in and it's actually going through that hole. Like that. And it's casting a shadow underneath or inside. And if you draw something like that, now you've created like a window, and now that's created a shadow, and that's now a hole instead of a round 3D object. Now that you're looking into a hole, that's the 3D object. Okay? If you have a pattern, let's say we have a pattern. Just trying to decide what kind of pattern here. Let's just do a simple flower of life type pattern. Not very good, not very straight, not very planned out. You can decide, because this is not a representational artwork. You can decide not only if there is a light source, you can decide which direction that light source is coming from. can be non-standard. Most of the time in regular art, your light source is coming from the upper right or the upper left. Because the sun is up in the sky, it's usually in the upper part of the landscape. Occasionally your light will come from below. When the light comes from below, it's more dramatic. You know, if the light's coming from below, it's because, you know, like a flashlight shining under somebody's chin, it creates a different kind of dramatic lighting. But for your pattern, let's say that my light source is still the same. So for my pattern, if these are solid, if this part is solid and that's behind, then I want to make this in shadow, just like I did with the ball. That's the side I want to make in shadow. And I want to make the bottom of these in shadow because the light's coming from up here. Always use your blending stump and blend that out, because that's what gives your eye that visual clue that it's shadow, because your eye always knows that when you've got a smudge like that and it goes off and it's darker on one side and goes off, that's a shadow. It's just how your brain works. Especially when it's up against a hard edge. As soon as you put a hard edge in here, now you absolutely see a shadow. And it's an interesting phenomenon that your brain does, because, you know, we are wired to see shapes and objects in 3D, which is why when you look up at a bunch of clouds, you see shapes. You know, you see cats and dogs and rabbits and castles and things in your clouds, because we were wired that way. We were wired to see recognizable objects in random patterns. It's very interesting what our brains do. But see, now they have shape. And if you decide that now you want this to show that it's even further back, you can make a darker edge on here, which will help make that look more 3D. And you can put an even darker shadow here, like so. And now it really looks like this is further off the page than this down here. And you know it's flat because you drew it. It's flat. But the way the shading works makes it pop off the page. So those are the things that that are really interesting. So what I want you to do is I want you to go into pattern-collections.com. Let me get get my phone ready here. I want you to go in, if you didn't pay attention to how to get there, go into the little menu, go by skill level, and go to stage 1. And scroll through here and find some patterns that speak to you and play with them. See, this is the one I just did here. That's Flower of Life. That's this one. I drew it differently than the step out. Did you notice that? Step out has you putting little dots and then doing one side. Oops, I can't point with my finger because I move the screen on my phone. Then it has you going like this, and then it has you going on this side. But you notice I did it a little more freeform, and I drew a rice shape. Instead of doing this side all the way down first, I did this rice shape, this rice shape, this rice shape, and then I came across. And that's the same thing here. It's just that they're showing you doing it differently. They're showing you go all the way down the left side first, and then all the way down the right side first, and then all the way across the top first, and then all the way across the bottom first. But that's not how I drew it, and that's okay. But then it shows you all the different ways you can play with this pattern. So I encourage you to go through the stage 1, the base patterns, find one or two that you think looks like fun, and just play with them. You can look up on my YouTube channel and see if I have done any of the patterns that you're looking at, and watch those videos. A lot of them I have done already, and that's your homework, is play with those patterns and then get out your pencil and play with shading. If you don't have a blending stump yet, you absolutely 100% can use your finger if you don't mind getting your hand dirty. There's some there. You can absolutely use your finger if you don't have a blending stump. 100% you can use your finger. Or you can get a Q-tip, cotton bud, earbud, whatever you want to call it. You can use that. You can use a little piece of rolled up piece of paper. You can use a cloth. Whatever you happen to have, absolutely, please do. But I want you to practice some easy step patterns, and then work on shading. That's the next step between now and the next lesson, which will be on Friday. So today is Monday. You have the rest of the week to practice your shapes and your shadings and your easy patterns. That's your homework. And then I have only planned through lesson number 4. So we'll see what happens after lesson number 4. But lesson number 4, I'm going to tell you what is CPT and how is it different from other pattern-based art, and why I like the CPT method of drawing my patterns. So that is what's going to be lesson number 4 coming up. And I will see you guys later. You guys go out and do something nice for someone today. Make the world a better place, one person at a time. And have a blessed day. See you guys later.